Hello, everyone. This is Rachel Johnson Greer with Cascadia Cellular Solutions, and I am joined this evening by Malia Kim, James Fordbay, and Leo Teixeira to talk about continue selling on Amazon during the crisis. Now that Amazon has stated that they will not be accepting FBA shipments for non-essential items, we have gotten a lot of questions on what to do. So the big question is, does your inventory consist of non-essential items?
On March 17th, Amazon sent out a message stating that they are going to prioritize things such as medical supplies, any household staples, and anything to do with maintaining and helping with hygiene.
And have you seen anything surprising in terms of what you've seen be allowed versus what you've seen not be allowed?
There's definitely some gray area. It seems that anything that's in the household is a hit and miss on what's flagged. For the most part, all the household and healthcare products are okay to go. Anything that's apparel related, anything that's an accessory to household goods, so not necessarily the chemicals or the soaps that you'd use, but maybe the handle of something, and things like auto parts. Those are the types of things that are definitely not allowed and considered non-essential.
Okay, got it. And what if, say, someone is selling quite a lot of an item because it is fairly popular at this time, but it's not considered essential? Is that something that you've run into, James?
Yes, we did run into that. Speaking to the gray area, I think Amazon didn't consider items that would be used for contingency and emergency sites. So there are like cots that would be used for that situation, and those ones are currently flagged. So that's one of the issues that we ran into with items that really are needed, for hospitals, for currently what's going on. So that's the one area that I wish Amazon would have reconsidered. And hopefully somewhere down the line, they will change that.
And when you contacted them, did they seem at all willing to discuss their bans, or were they perfectly happy to let whatever had been decided at corporate stand?
Yeah, they basically what they indicate is it came down from the higher ups. There was no appeal process. Whatever decision was made on their end was final, and they heard what I was saying, but they weren't able to make any changes. And they just said, currently, as it stands now, Amazon is not making any decision or making any moves to change any of the decisions that they handed down.
Got it. So what we really need to find is ways to cope with it, because there is not currently any sort of appeal process. Got it.
Exactly.
Okay, so what does that mean for your FBA sales as an Amazon seller? So according to what Amazon said, shipping plans into Amazon will not be possible until April 5th or further notice. And inventory currently at the fulfillment centers will be shipped to Amazon customers until it runs out. I am pretty confident that any shipping plans that you created will certainly work just fine. So anyone who's worried about shipping things in, don't worry about it. Just send it in. They will accept it. It might be a little bit delayed though. So in the situation that you do want to continue to offer your products after they've sold out at FBA, which some of our clients already have, what kind of options do you have? You can choose to do merchant fulfilled. This is one acronym that's used, MFN, that some people use, Merchant Fulfilled Network, as opposed to the Amazon Fulfilled Network, or AFN. The other term used for it is Fulfilled by Merchant, or FBM, instead of FBA. Okay, so what does it entail to use the MFN network as opposed to FBA? So when you are making these listings, Jim, is there any loss of reviews or ranking or anything else that occurs when you switch something from FBA to merchant fulfilled?
No, there's not. It's essentially the same product. You just, one, obviously Amazon is distributing, the other one the manufacturer is distributing. It's virtually the same listing. It uses the same ASIN, which is why the rank and other such details are maintained. The only thing that changes is the SKU, but that doesn't change the description or designation of the product.
And by handle the fulfillment yourself, does that mean that you actually have to physically handle the fulfillment, or does that mean that you are simply responsible for the fulfillment? Malia, can you speak a little bit more to what it means to handle something yourself as opposed to having FBA handle it?
Yep, MFN just means that the merchant is responsible for basically taking the order in, making sure that they're looking at the orders, shipping them on time, and then having, whether it's their own fulfillment center, their own factory, or it could be a third-party vendor that they've hired to take the orders, actually pick, pack, and ship them out for them in a timely manner.
And when you're talking about, handle the fulfillment yourself, I think a question that might come up is, does Amazon expect you to physically touch or handle the goods yourself, or just make sure that they are in the quality and packaging that Amazon would expect if they were shipping it out?
Good question. It's basically they're expecting the same standard. So whatever you're advertising, the customer needs to receive it in that same condition. Obviously, it needs to match the listing, because then that would be an issue. And then you don't have to physically touch the product. Like I said, you can have a third-party vendor do it on your behalf, where they store the products for you, pick, pack, and ship. Or if you have your own facility, you can actually do it yourself if that's what your capabilities are up to.
And a question for you, Leo. I know you've done a lot of work with clients around packaging. When items are being shipped, do you need to do anything special if you're using a third-party fulfillment center or a UPS fulfillment center? Anything else that you would do differently than with FBA? Or what are some of the changes that you could potentially make with packaging, or should you not? Should you stick with the same packaging that you use with FBA? What does Amazon expect for items shipped out to customers?
That if you're going to ship it out to a customer, that if you're going to ship it out in its current box, that you have planned and you have tested, or at least have attempted to ship your box within its own container. So that's called SIOC. If you have not tried that, then I recommend that you work with a packaging lab and if you're planning on, doing that in the future, I recommend you work with the packaging lab to make sure it passes tests for like ISTA tests for transit. If not, then make sure that the package is in another box and wrapped well and shipped out that way.
And you just said, do you think that some sort of bubble wrap is necessary before you put it in a box, or what's the thickness of box, do you mean? I know some folks kind of laugh at Amazon with putting their little plastic baggies inside of a big cardboard box, but what's kind of the expectation when you're shipping a product to a consumer?
Yeah, that the box will not, so that your product does not move when it's in the box. And that's why Amazon stuffs it full of plastic bubbles. If you notice that it could be by itself in this huge box, and they'll just shove it full of plastic bubbles. That's the expectation that they have, that you make sure that if it's bubble wrap, or if it's, hopefully not peanuts, but if it's, the recyclable peanuts, that it's full of something to make sure that your product's not going to get damaged in transit.
Awesome. So if you are in the process of trying to figure out the best way to ship out through merchant fulfillment, you may actually realize through this process that maybe merchant fulfillment might actually be something where you can learn a few things about your packaging, which would be pretty cool.
Exactly.
So when you ship directly to the Amazon customer, if you are shipping directly to Amazon customer, do you need to set up relationships with UPS or FedEx or try to get an account there, Malia? Or are you able to do something maybe a little bit easier through Amazon? What are the options there?
So you have several different options, like you had just discussed. One option is to actually find your own relationships, create your own contracts, and find out what is the best price and method for you and your situation. The other method is to actually use Amazon's shipping, and the only benefit for that is Amazon actually takes responsibility in the event something happens with the package in transit with their contracted couriers.
And by process your own returns, how would you manage something, Jim, if something came back to you and it was not the product that you shipped out? Say you shipped out an iPhone and a brick came back. I'm not joking, that's actually happened to one of our clients. What would be the process to handle something like that?
So what you'd have to do is create a ticket, get as much documentation as you possibly could. Typically, when these items are returned, there's like a LPN or a return label. That's a form of documentation that Amazon would accept. Images are good because they're Amazon's big on visuals. So if you have your packing slip, showing, and the order ID, I should mention as well. If you have the order ID, the return label, and images of the product that was sent back there. If you have that documentation, it's best to provide that when you create a ticket for these. And what you would have to do is explain the situation to Amazon. Order A, was an iPhone. Something else was returned. A different product came back, and then when you submit that ticket, provide all that documentation in the ticket, and let Amazon know that it needs to be investigated and file for a possible reimbursement. What I would imagine would look to do is see if they could figure out like what happened in transit for the return and try to recover it if possible. But most likely in situations like that, it would be a reimbursement on Amazon's end. But again, they definitely require documentation. And unfortunately, in that situation, the burden of proof is on the actual seller in that case. So Amazon's going to make you provide all the documentation so they can, before they even investigate the issue, and the more documentation you have, the better. And that'll, be more, excuse me, information for them to get your reimbursement processed as soon as possible.
Awesome. So it's not exactly easy. It's not as easy as letting Amazon do it for you, but it's certainly doable in case there's some sort of problem with the returns that you're getting.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about creating MFN listings and some of the methods, tips, and tricks that we have for you. All right, so the first step is to add a product. You can use the add a product tool in manage inventory, or you can do a bulk upload via flat file. So to find the add a product, once you click on add a product, then it pops you into this new screen that says list a product, where you can then put the existing ASIN that you have into search, and it will pop up your ASIN. That's the simplest way to find a product that you want to create a fulfilled by merchant listing for. You can also switch your FBA listing over to fulfilled by merchant, but in this situation, we're assuming that you want to make fulfilled by merchant temporary, and eventually we'll go back to using Amazon as soon as it's reasonable to do so. So we are not showing you how to switch something from FBA to FBM. What we're doing is showing you how to create an entirely different second SKU so that you can do both, hopefully sooner for FBA rather than later. Okay, so some of the challenges that we've seen clients run into when setting pricing or managing shipping is when you're thinking about FBA, you're typically including the cost of shipping. With merchant fulfillment, you can choose whether or not to include the cost of shipping, or if you want to tack it on separately. James, when you are putting together shipping templates for clients, what are some of the pitfalls that they run into, and some of the challenges if you just turn on merchant fulfillment and expect shipping to make sense just out of the box?
Some of the things that you have to be aware of when you create your template, you have to consider what regions you're going to be shipping to and potential cost to get to those regions. You also have to consider how much time you allow yourself to have the product once it's sold, or once it's purchased rather, give how much time you give yourself to get that product out and to the customers by the date that Amazon deems that they should reasonably receive it. So like when you set up your shipping template, you want to be careful that you consider the item you're shipping, of course, the weight of the item, where it's going, and then you have to be, like I said, be careful. Like some of the like Alaska and Hawaii, some of the territories that are, or states rather, that are a little further out, and your cost of shipping might be a lot higher than what you would expect. In the past, I've seen shipping templates set up, by some of our clients, and they didn't really consider the cost that it would take to get their product to a certain area. They didn't, you have to make sure that you consider the time, because Amazon's very, very strict on making sure items are received on time, so the metrics aren't negatively impacted. So there's definitely things you absolutely have to consider. And as you mentioned, you can either factor that into your price, or like I said, you can set your price to a certain point and then set up your shipping template accordingly. One of the good things to do, or one of the things that you can do to make sure your shipping prices are accurate, is kind of do like you can go into like maybe a FedEx or a UPS, kind of plug in your item weight and say it's gone to like a certain region, and get an idea of like how much it would cost you, and then you can base your shipping template based on that.
Awesome. So it's completely editable, right? So you
Oh
don't
yeah,
have to do
absolutely.
whatever Amazon says.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Excuse me.
So when you're setting the buffer of 1 to 2 days for handling, is that in the shipping template too, or is it somewhere else?
That is actually in the listing itself. I believe it is on the offer page. Like once the MFN listing is created, there's like by default, it'll be blank, but it's by default Amazon gives you 2 days for your handling time. If you feel that you need more time, that's something that's editable through the listing itself.
And just a total side note, I heard from a friend of mine a couple of years ago who worked at Amazon at the time, that sellers who use merchant fulfillment consistently, who had 1 day handling time, so the delivery time was faster, ended up selling about 30 to 40% more when their handling time was increased and nothing else changed. So if you can do faster handling time, it does seem to make a difference in terms of your conversion rate. Okay, so Malia, you had mentioned this a little bit a few slides ago, but when you're having to buy Amazon shipping, and you said that it's really important to do this, what exactly are you referring to in terms of how you have proof with Amazon about the shipping and delivery? Why is that so important?
Like James mentioned, Amazon is very strict on delivery times. So if you're going to promise an Amazon customer that they're going to get it within a certain time frame, you better believe that you better get it there, or else it's going to negatively impact your metrics as a seller, as an MFN listing. So when you buy from Amazon shipping, essentially you're paying them for the shipping, so then they become ultimately responsible to make sure that the customer does get it within the time frame and for the price that you've purchased for that service.
And when you are buying from Amazon, typically would you say that our clients have said that it's more expensive, about the same or less expensive than going direct to various shippers?
I think it just depends on your business size. I would think for smaller sellers, if you're shipping bigger, heavier items, if you can have the velocity to sell a higher amount, you can probably get a lower cost contract with a different courier. On average, it's slightly higher to use the Amazon shipping, but you're also paying for the peace of mind that you don't have to go in, put in the tracking, make sure the courier is on time, make sure you're tracking that everything is going right out in the world amongst this chaos, and that people are actually still delivering packages. So I think it just really depends on your situation and what you can offer, and negotiate with the couriers that offer services for all types of businesses.
Okay, so let's get into some of the questions that we have gotten from clients in the past couple days as everyone's scrambling to try to figure out what to do here. Do you need to create different content for your merchant fulfilled listings than for your FBA listings? Is that something that you've experienced, Jim, or should you make sure that it's exactly the same?
It should be exactly the same. As I mentioned earlier, it's going to be the same ASIN. The only thing that's going to be different, I shouldn't say the only thing, a couple of things that'll be different obviously is the SKU, and then obviously who's fulfilling the item once it's sold, but the content would be exactly the same.
Is there any need to advertise the listings separately or differently? And that's a question for Malia. Is there anything different about how you would be putting those items out, or do they essentially function the same way when the customer gets to the page? What's different really for what the customer sees?
Like James said, it's the same ASIN, so it functions exactly the same. So no, there is no need to advertise the listing separately or differently.
When we sometimes see people forget that they are different SKUs, the system, you do have to tell the system to advertise it. But yeah, once they get on the page, I don't think, I think the only thing that I've really seen customers complain about is that handling time thing. Because no one, you know, when you get used to having something arrive the next day, thanks Amazon, it's hard to get anyone to be like, okay, I guess I'll wait a week. But even FBA is struggling to keep up right now. So hopefully people have a little bit more reasonable expectation when they get on the page um, about how much time it will take to get them product. How do you identify FBA versus merchant fulfillment in manage inventory in the dashboard? James, is there an easy way to toggle back and forth?
Yeah, the method I like to implore is that it depends on which listings created first, but typically say your SKU is ABC, that may be your merchant fulfilled listing. If you create or I should say if you have ABC is like say your FBA or MFN listing, what I try to do is when I create the new SKU, I use the same SKU followed by either FBA or MFN depending on what you're using. So basically it is easy to identify based off of the SKU. So when you're looking at it, you might see ABC, MFN, then ABC, FBA, and that's kind of like your point of difference there.
Awesome. And that's super, super helpful. I found in downloads, there are a lot of downloads with reports that are based on SKU. And don't ask me why, I have no idea why it was set up that way. But some things are based on SKU, some things are based on ASIN, some things are based on FNSKU. It seems to be based on however they designed that particular table is how it gets published. One nice thing that I personally like on the Manage Inventory page is that the FBA items, you can always tell immediately because they have the cost for the shipping and handling also showing on the preview cost, where it's just the referral fee for the merchant fulfilled. And so then it's pretty obvious there. And then you can't edit quantities at FBA, of course. But it can help when you're scrolling through reports to have this SKU be different. And what we found with some of our clients is that they have integrations with other systems where they need to have the first part of the SKU be exactly the same and they can't have it be different. So by adding like space something or other, or by adding an edit to the end of the SKU, they can still work appropriately with whatever third-party software they're using and keep track of the SKUs that way. So if you want to update the quantity, how do you do that, Malia?
So that's pretty simple. After you create the listing, it'll pop up in your Manage Inventory dashboard. I'm a little bit lazier than Rachel and James, so when I want to look for just my merchant fulfilled listings, there's a fulfilled by filter on the top. I usually just click merchant so that I only see my MFN listings. You'll see a box pop up under available. It'll automatically default to 0, and you can just go ahead and enter the number that you're able to offer, and then you hit save.
And how many should you be putting in there? So should you be putting in the exact quantity that you have available? Is that reasonable? Or are there other thoughts about what kind of quantity you should make available at a time via merchant fulfillment?
I think it just depends on what your business strategy is. If you're trying to just get rid of your inventory, you would obviously list all of it. If you're trying to ration it, then you could put increments if you'd like. You definitely don't want to offer more than what you have on hand, because if you do have orders, then you'd be in trouble and you'd have to cancel them. And then if you're going for something like a exclusivity strategy, you can again put lower limits a little bit at a time. So it really just depends on what your business strategy is.
Now we have a client who had a new employee in their shipping department. And I always thought this was kind of funny where we were like, all right, so how many products do you have available? They said, well, maybe we should ask how many problems my guy can, and how many products my guy can ship and go from there. And so for him, it wasn't so much about what was available, but he was worried about his employees' ability to keep up. If you're using a third party company, then you may want to check on them because they may be overwhelmed right now with all the shipping that's happening and how much is going on for them. They may be staffed up just fine. It really depends on the situation. So you definitely want to ask. Certainly if you've got someone new helping you, or if you're trying to do this yourself and enlisting the help of your kids who are no longer in school, they may not be quite as efficient as some other options. So do you need to have the inventory on hand when you upload those quantities, Malia? Or do you think that if the products are, say, on their way somewhere, how much leeway does Amazon give you if something goes wrong?
Like James mentioned earlier, and we've been talking about, so you do have seller metrics for merchant fulfilled, just like FBA. For merchant fulfilled, obviously the things that they're looking at is your tracking. Have you provided adequate tracking? The time that it's taken to get to the customer. Have you shipped it out in a timely manner? So all of those things do matter. If you're going to list it for sale and people are going to start to purchase them, once it's purchased, the clock starts ticking. And all of those variables that James talked about in creating a shipping plan or the shipping template, those will all apply to once the purchase is made. So you definitely want to make sure you have it on hand and that your staff is ready to roll and get the products out to the customer because that's what they purchased and for the time frame that they've paid for.
So what I'm hearing is Amazon is not very good at giving leeway, but I'm not sure that anyone is surprised by that. Okay, when you're trying to find your orders and returns, I know most of us are pretty used to going into reports and fulfillment and then finding our customer returns there. Is that where the merchant fulfilled orders and returns live, Malia?
Yep, so when you log into your Seller Central account, you can go under orders, manage orders, and your manage orders will show up there. And then for your returns, that's actually under reports and then return reports. And I believe also under orders, you'll be able to see once an order is canceled. So they'll have a status there. For a nice little cheat sheet, if you just go to your main page, you'll see your orders breakdown on the dashboard. It's usually in your upper left-hand corner, and you'll get to see the breakdown between seller fulfilled and fulfillment by Amazon.
Okay, great. So if someone's looking for their returns, they can find it under manage orders, or they can find it under reports, return reports, but they're not going to find it in the same place as the FBA returns, right?
That's correct.
All right, how do you fulfill the merchant fulfilled orders, Jim? What kind of options do people have there?
As far as fulfilling the merchant fulfilled orders, it depends on, as Malia mentioned earlier, it depends on the scenario. Like, you could have like a third party company that, ships your products out. They could be shipped out from your warehouse, if you're like a one person business, if you will. A lot of times people are shipping out, out of their, out of their homes. So there's different ways that merchant fulfilled orders are sent to customers. It just depends on your business size and what makes sense for you from a cost standpoint.
One interesting option that some folks use is also something called drop shipping. And that's only available if your supplier can actually do this. But in some cases, suppliers can actually ship direct to consumer from their own warehouses. So you don't even have to take ownership of the goods. They can actually go directly from your supplier's warehouse straight to the customer, which then eliminates an entire step in the process, which is you. Then all you've got to do is find the customer. So at what point should you start creating your merchant fulfilled listings, Malia?
You can create the MFN listings at any time, as long as it does not have any loaded inventory. Customers are not able to buy any products. So considering that, many of you may not have any way to ship in inventory if you have non-essential items. If you're staying at home, self-quarantining, or social distancing, you should get on that computer and start uploading and creating your MFN listings, just as a way to get ahead of the curve. And then once you have that inventory where you need it to start shipping out, go ahead and turn those MFN listings on and see how it goes.
It sounds like this is something that you could do while watching Netflix, which I feel like is what a lot of us are doing when stuck at home all the time. What are some software options to keep track of orders and returns? I know one really common one is ShipStation. That one connects, I think, to Shopify, to WooCommerce, to Amazon. It connects to just about everything. But there are also some other options beyond ShipStation. What are some of the options that you've worked with previously, Malia? I think Malia might still be on mute. I know we worked with a client who had Magento connected to their website. James, what were some of the challenges that they had when trying to connect Amazon to the rest of their shipping?
One of the big issues that they encountered with that is, I believe Amazon at one point made some changes to their system, and it didn't filter into the client's Magento system. So unfortunately, what happened with a lot of their merchant fulfilled listings, they didn't know that those items had been purchased and were waiting to get sent out to customers. Obviously they made changes to it, but some of this third-party software, you definitely want to be careful that there's a fail-safe in place, meaning Amazon is very unforgiving, and in this situation, their account actually got shut down because for that exact reason, even though it was Amazon generated error where Amazon system wasn't speaking to the system that they were using, Magento. But what Amazon required as far as like the plan of action was that they wanted to make sure if something like this would happen again, what would prevent any I guess lag in the clients getting or the customers getting their purchase. So you definitely have to be careful and just consider that everything's not going to work 100% all the time, and you definitely have to have a backup plan, because again, Amazon just is unforgiving. They're big on metrics. They're big on making sure the customers are taken care of and they're happy. And once that it falls below that target, like I said, they're very, very strict, and they want to see that you're taking action, and that if regardless of the scenario, if it would happen again, there's a plan in place that you jump into action immediately, and there's not going to be an impact to the customer.
That's so great to point out that even though it was an error from Amazon's MWS system to Magento, the seller was still responsible for it, always responsible for it. So one of the things they do is just check it manually every day and make sure that the automation was working. So even if you set up a third-party logistics provider, make sure every day that those orders are going out on time like they're supposed to. So Malia, what are some of the things that can happen if an order has something that goes wrong with it and you purchased Amazon shipping? What are your options when talking to Amazon?
So again, one of the benefits of ordering or using Amazon shipping and applying it to your orders instead of using your own courier is that Amazon almost always takes responsibility for the issue incurred. You get to see what has happened in the transit, if something, if something did occur, if it was delayed, if it was damaged or lost. You get to see all that records. You basically can just open a case and appeal. But for the most part, we haven't really run into this issue very often because, like I said, Amazon does do a good job in taking responsibility when you buy shipping through their services.
And if the MFN shipping metrics do drop below Amazon's target, did they just immediately suspend you? I'm sure that everyone's kind of a little bit scared after that story that James told. Or do you have a little bit of time to try to adjust and make changes?
So they do give you, what'll happen is when you log into your seller account, if your metrics do fall below the target, you'll see, I believe it's on the top left-hand corner, you'll see like a little flag or flash that indicates that your account is at risk of being deactivated. That's Amazon's warning to say, hey, your metrics are falling below par. You need to get that corrected as soon as possible. They're not going to give you too much of a warning if you fail to do anything, or if your metrics keep dropping below the expected target. They will suspend your account, and believe me, it's very, very tough to get it reinstated. Again, they're going to require a plan of action. They're going to want to know what happened. They're going to want to make sure or ensure that, selling on their platform, you're not, causing customers to be dissatisfied. So you definitely have to make sure that you're paying attention to those the account health warnings, I believe they are, and it'll tell you what the target is and where your percentage is. And like I said, the best course of action, as soon as you see that, look to get your metrics up as soon as possible.
Can you be enrolled in Seller Fulfilled Prime without applying and going through the trial period? Is this something that, say, if I were to set up my account for Seller Fulfilled Prime tomorrow, which I haven't done merchant fulfillment since I was in college and shipping out my used textbooks, would I be able to jump right into Seller Fulfilled Prime?
So currently Amazon has you actually apply for Seller Fulfilled Prime, and then you have to do a trial period of 50 orders. If you're able to keep your metrics up and stay within targets, follow their eligibility requirements, which are the things we've been talking about, making sure you're providing accurate tracking, shipping, actually leaving your fulfillment center at the appropriate time, and then getting there to the customer in transit within the promised time period. Those are all things that would allow you to become a Seller Fulfilled Prime seller. But I believe at this time they're no longer taking any more applications. So you must apply in order to go through the trial period and then become a Seller Fulfilled Prime merchant.
And right now, given the difficulties that everyone's having with getting anything done on time in terms of delivery, it sounds like right now would probably not be a good time to test your supply chain in terms of being held to such tight metrics.
That's correct. We've been seeing some slowdowns, tracking numbers not being updated with the Canadian Post, USPS. So there's definitely a big rush. People, obviously don't want to head out to the stores, so they're doing more online buying. So the stress of that is obviously not within the traffic in your cars anymore, but it's with your local carriers trying to get all your packages in and then safely to their destination. So we're definitely seeing an uptick in deliveries.
So right now, depending on how quickly Amazon turns FBA back on, even if you are eligible in, say, a month, we might not recommend trying to use Seller Fulfilled Prime at this time until things really return to normal. That sounds like the most prudent approach here. Okay, so a few recommendations for non-Amazon FCs. These three are companies that we've worked with personally, and I am happy to recommend them as companies that will store your product in a safe and reasonably priced manner and will ship out your product in the manner that you want them to. I will not say that any of them are quite as efficient as Amazon, but I don't think anyone really is as efficient as Amazon at a per box, a box per million orders kind of concept. But some of these smaller companies actually can do more interesting stuff with their shipments out. So one of the things that we find can be really helpful for building a community and for building a following is actually using merchant fulfilled shipments. So Leo, when you're trying to get more people involved in, say, someone's social media, or when you're trying to get people to follow on Instagram, Facebook, and try to get people to use specific hashtags for a company, what are some of the ways that you could do that using MFN? I'm sure we've done things before like stickers or inserts or various ways to get your customers involved this way. What are some of the options that you suggest to try to connect with your community when you're shipping merchant fulfillment?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think I understood your question. So when we're doing any post and we are trying to direct them to our MFN listings, there's a link that you can go find a source tag for, and that we get that link in, we post that link in the body of the verbiage for your, your Instagram post or your social media post. And or if you're doing a campaign, we add it into the campaign. So when they're swiping up to shop now, it takes them directly to that listing. And you can direct them directly to the listing that you want them to look at, so that when they do buy it, you actually get those results on Amazon side. They can tell you that, 10 people viewed your campaign, 8 people purchased your product. But yeah, either in the body, or if you're doing a campaign, then we post it in within the campaign itself.
So it seems like if you were to use merchant fulfillment to try to get people to sign up for social, like, hey, if you sign up for social, you can get 20% off your next order or something like that, then you can actually do some really cool stuff with getting traffic to your Amazon listings, right? With these
Yes.
and so on. So,
Yes.
I mean, some people might think of merchant fulfillment as a burden in a way, like, man, I loved FBA. It was so much easier just to ship stuff in. But it seems like there's some real opportunity to get people more involved in buying online from you, not just on Amazon.
Yep. Exactly. You can put your inserts in there to say, like, hey, check us out on social media, so that you have a presence there as well. That's another opportunity.
And every opportunity to get in front of somebody is a opportunity you want to make. We actually were talking about this recently with different kinds of packaging. Certain kinds of packaging goes away immediately, right? Because it's just holding the product safely until it arrives. Other kinds of packaging, especially packaging for consumable items, is often used for the entire life of the product. So your supplement packaging, or your protein bar box, or your cleaner spray bottle, or the dish soap that you're using, whatever the case may be, a lot of times the package actually has the most airtime, if you will, of anything that you are offering. And a lot of times I think people forget that you have this amazing opportunity to use the packaging and build your own following for your brand. With Amazon, you get access to so many customers, but they're not really your customers. They're always Amazon's customers. And with something like merchant fulfillment, you can add content, like Leo just mentioned, inserts. We have seen folks do stickers like on top of shampoo bottles or lotions or creams. Stickers usually work better than inserts because they can ship out just in their own bottle. So you can do lots of different things to kind of take advantage of this moment, turn this into a positive. For the recommendations that we have, the 3 companies that we would recommend doing, all 3 of them can do those kind of things for you, where they could attach stickers, or they can prep in a certain way, or do inserts. Unlike Amazon, which not only does not want you to do a bunch of that stuff because it builds a relationship with their customer, but also you wouldn't trust Amazon to do it because they don't talk to you and they'd probably screw it up. So with a third-party logistics provider, you can get not only the same kind of shipping support as you get with FBA, but you can do some really cool marketing stuff too. And the first company is Bridgeway Business. The website is bway, B-W-A-Y, business.com. The second is the first company is based in Illinois or Indiana, I believe. I always get that mixed up. The second company is called Box In, Box Out, and it's in Virginia. And I believe their website is Box In, Box Out. But if you Google it, you'll be able to find it. And the third company that we recommend is based in Tennessee, and it is called Synergy Recommerce. They also have a partner fulfillment center out in California. So if you were to use them, you would be able to ship products to both California and to Tennessee, which could then get you shipping pretty much to most of the United States within a couple days, which is a really great thing in terms of availability of your product and delivery times. So the company there is synergyrecommerce.com, and one of the tools that you can use of theirs is warehousing. They also do some refurbishment. If you happen to sell electronic or household goods, they do refurbish products, check returns, and take care of it for you, which can be also really great if FBA is causing you problems. If you are interested in getting set up for MFN listings and you are not 100% confident that you can handle this yourself, please reach out. All you need to do is send a message to info@Cascadia for a custom quote, depending on the size of your catalog. If you would like help with getting set up with software or help with getting set up with a third-party logistics provider, we can help with that as well. If you have any other questions about how to navigate this kind of crazy world that we are in right now, with everyone socially distancing themselves and trying to keep themselves safe, we are always here to help, and we would love it if you could sign up for our Facebook group, the Former Amazonians Guide to the Zon. And every Friday, I am in there live answering questions and Ask Me Anything, so that all of your questions can be answered. We get questions anywhere from, I got stuck creating this listing, what problems could it be, all the way to, I'm thinking of trying this new Amazon program, but it looks like it might be expensive. What are your thoughts? And we're here to give answers and to give guidance that is focused, that is professional, and that is not about cheating the system or hacking the system or anything else like that, but using the tools that are available to you to have an awesome and successful business on Amazon, in spite of any crazy things that might be happening in the world today. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to Malia and James and Leo for providing their expertise. Really appreciate it, and hope you guys enjoyed today's webinar. Take care. Bye-bye.